after the sky. Harry lay flat on his back, breathing hard as though he had been running. He had awoke from a vivid dream with his hand pressed over his face. The old scar on his forehead, which was shaped like a bolt of lightning, was burning beneath his neck as though someone had just pressed a white hot wire to his skin. He sat up, one hand still on his scar, the other reaching out in the darkness for his glasses, which were on the beside table. He put them on, and his bedroom came into clearer focus, lighted by a faint, misty orange light that was lightning through the curtain from the street lamp outside the window. Harry ran his finger over the scar again. It was still painful. He turned on the lamp outside him, scrambled out of bed, crossed the room, opened his wardrobe, and peered into the mirror on the inside of the door. A skinny boy of 14 looked back at him, his bright green eyes puzzled under his untidy black hair. He examined the lightning bolt scar of his reflection more closely. It looked normal, but it was still staring. Harry tried to recall what he had been dreaming about before he had woken. It had seemed so real. There had been two people he knew and one he didn't. He concentrated hard, frothing, trying to remember. The dim picture of a darkened room came to him. There had been a snake on a hearthrug, a small man called Peter, nicknamed Wormtail, and a cold, high voice, the voice of Lord Voldemort. Harry felt as though the ice cube had slipped down into his stomach at the very thought. He closed his eyes tightly and tried to remember what Voldemort had looked like, but it was impossible. All Harry knew was that at the moment when Voldemort's chair had swung around and Harry, had seen what was staying in it, he had felt a spasm of horror which had awoke him, or had that been the pain in his scar? And who had the old man been? For there had definitely been an old man. Harry had watched him fall to the ground. It was all becoming confused. Harry put his face into his hand, blocking out his bedroom, trying to hold on to the picture of that dimly lit room. But it was like trying to keep water in his cupped hands. The details were now trickling away as fast as he tried to hold on them. Voldemort and Wormtail had been talking about someone they had killed, though Harry could not remember the name, and they had been plotting to kill someone else, him. Harry took his face out of his hand, opened his eyes, and stared around his bedroom as though expecting to see something unusual there. As it happened, there were an extraordinary number of unusual things in this room. Large wooden trunk stood open at the front of his bed, revealing a cauldron, broomstick, black robe, and assorted spellbook. A roll of parchment littered that part of his desk that was not taken up by the large, empty cage in which his snowy owl Hedwig usually perched. On the floor beside his table, a book lay open. Harry had been reading it before he fell asleep last night. Pictures in this book were all moving. Men in bright orange robes were zooming in and out of sight on broomsticks, throwing a red ball to one another. Harry walked over to the book, picked it up, and watched one of the wizards score a spectacular goal by putting the ball through a 5-foot high loop. Then he snapped the book shut, even which, in Harry's opinion, the best sport in the world, couldn't distract him at the moment. He placed flying with the cannon on his beside table, crossed to the window, and drew back the curtain to survey the street below. Private Drive looked exactly as the respectable, stubborn street would be expected to look in the early hours of the Saturday morning. All the curtains were closed as far as Harry could see through the darkness. There wasn't a living creature in sight, not even a cat. And yet, Harry went restless back to the bed and sat down on it, running a finger across over his scar again. It wasn't the pain that bothered him. Harry was no stranger to pain and injury. He had lost all the bones from his right arm once and had them painfully regrown in a night. The same arm had been pierced by a venomous foot-long fat not long afterward. Only last year Harry had fallen free from an airborne broomstick. He was used to bizarre accidents and injuries. They were unavoidable if you attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and had a knack for attracting a lot of troubles. No, the thing that was bothering Harry was that the last time his scar had hurt him, it had been because Voldemort had been close by, but Voldemort couldn't be here. Now, the idea of Voldemort lurking in Private Drive was absurd, impossible. Harry listened closely to the silence around him. Was he half expecting to hear the crack of a stair or swish of a clock? And then he jumped slightly as he heard his cousin Dudley give a tremendous grunting snore from the next room. Harry shook himself mentally. He was being stupid. There was no one in the house with his except Uncle Vernon, Aunt Putania, and Dudley, and they were plainly still asleep. Their dreams untroubled and painless. Asleep was the way Harry liked the Dursleys best. It wasn't as though they were ever any help to him awake. Uncle Vernon, Aunt Putania, and Dudley were Harry's only living relatives. There were muggles who hated and despised magic in any form, which meant that Harry was about as welcome in their house as dry rot. They had explained away Harry's long absence at Hogwarts over the last 3 years by telling everyone that he went to St. Brutus Secure Center for Incurably Criminal Boys. They knew perfectly well that as underage wizard Harry wasn't allowed to use magic outside Hogwarts, but they were still apt to blame him for anything that went wrong about the house. Harry had never been able to condemn them or tell them anything about his life in Wizardian world. The very idea of going to them when they awake and telling them about his scar hurting him and about his worries about Voldemort was laughable. Yet it was because of Voldemort that Harry had come to live with the Dursley in the rest place. If it hadn't been for Voldemort, Harry would not have had the lightning scar on his forehead. If it hadn't been for Voldemort, Harry would still have had parents. Harry had been a year old the night that Voldemort, the most powerful dark wizard for a century, a wizard who had been gaining power steadily for 11 years, arrived at his house and killed his father and mother. Voldemort had then turned his wand on Harry. He had performed the curse that had disposed of many full-grown witches and wizards in his steady rise to power. And incredibly, it had not worked. Instead of killing the small boy, the curse had rebounded upon Voldemort. Harry had survived with nothing but lightning-shaped cut on his forehead, and Voldemort has been reduced to something barely alive. His power gone, his life almost extinguished, Voldemort had fled. The terror in which the secret community of witches and wizards had lived for so long had lifted. Voldemort's followers had disbanded and Harry Potter had become famous. It had been enough of a shock for Harry to discover on his 11th birthday that he was a wizard. It had been even more disconcerting to find out that everyone in the hidden Wizardian world knew his name. Harry had arrived at Hogwarts too, and that hate, stern, and whisper followed him wherever he went. But he was used to it now. At the end of this summer, he would be starting his 4th year at Hogwarts, and Harry was already counting the days until he would be back at the castle again. But there was still a fortnight to go before he went back to school. He looked hopeless around his room again and his eyes paused on the birthday card his two best friends had sent him at the end of July. What would they say if Harry wrote to them and told them about his car hurting? At once, Hermione Granger's voice seemed to fill his head, shrill and panicky. Your scar hurts? Harry, that's really serious. Write to Professor Dumbledore. Malfoy and clock common magical climate and affiliation. Maybe there's something in there about her scar. Yes, that will be Hermione's advice. Go straight to the headmaster of Hogwarts. And in the meantime, consult a book. Harry started out of the window and the inky blue black sky. He doubted very much whether a book could help him now. As far as he knew, he was the only living person to have survived a curse like Voldemort's. It was highly unlikely, therefore, that he would and his symptoms listen in common magical elements and affiliation. As for informing the headmaster, Harry had no idea where Dumbledore went during the summer holidays. He amused himself for a moment picturing Dumbledore with his long silver beard, full-length wizard's robe and pointing hat, stretched out on the beach somewhere, rubbing a Sutan lotion onto his long cropped nose wherever Dumbledore was, though Harry was sure that Hedwig would be able to hand him. Harry's owl had never yet failed to deliver a letter to anyone, even without an address. But what would he write? Dear Professor Dumbledore, sorry to bother you, but my scar hurt this morning. Yours sincere, Harry Potter. Even inside his head, the word sounded stupid, and so he tried to imagine his other best friend Ron Weasley's reaction. And in a moment, Ron's red hair and long nose, freckled face seemed to swim before Harry, wearing a bemused expression. Your scar hurts, but you know who can't be near you now. Can he? I mean, you don't know. Wouldn't you? He had been trying to do you it again. Wouldn't he? I don't know. Harry may be cursed car always doing a bit. I'll ask Dad. Mr. Weasley was a fully quilled wizard who worked in the Ministry of Magical Muggle Artificial Office at the Ministry of Magic. But he didn't have any particular expertise in the matter of curses. As far as Harry knew, in any case, Harry didn't like the idea of the whole Weasley family knowing that Harry was getting jumpy about a few moments' pain. Mrs. Weasley, who first worse than Hermione, and Fred and George, Ron, 16-year-old twin brothers, might think Harry was losing his nerve. The Weasley were Harry's favorite family in the world. He was hoping that they might invite him to stay any time now. Ron had mentioned some time about the Quidditch World Cup, and he somehow didn't want to visit punctured with anxious inquiries about his scar. Harry kneaded his forehead with his knuckle what he really wanted, and it felt almost shameless to admit it to himself. Was someone like a parent, an adult wizard whose advice he would ask without feeling stupid. Someone who cared about him, who had had some experience with dark magic. And then the solution came to him. It was so simple and so obvious that he couldn't believe it had taken so long. Sirius. Harry leaped up from the bed, hurried across the room, and sat down at his desk. He pulled a piece of parchment toward him, loaded his eagle feather quill with ink, wrote Dear Cyrus, then paused, wondering how best to phrase his problem, still marveling at the fact that he hadn't thought of Cyrus straight away. But then perhaps it wasn't so surprising. After all, he had only found out that Cyrus was his godfather 2 months ago. There was a simple reason for Cyrus' complete absence from Harry's life until then. Cyrus had been in Azkaban, the terrifying wizard jail, guarded by the creature called Dementors, sightless, soul-sucking Ian who had come to search for Cyrus at Hogwarts when he had escaped. Yet Cyrus had been innocent. The murders for which he had been convicted had been committed by Wormtail, Voldemort's supporter, whom nearly everybody now believed dead. Harry, Ron and Hermione knew otherwise. However, they had come face to face with Wormtail only the previous year. Only Professor Dumbledore had believed their story. For one glorious hour, Harry had believed that he was leaving the Dursley at last, because Cyrus had offered him a home once his name had been cleared. But the chance had been snatched away from him. Wormtail had escaped before they could take him to the Ministry of Magic, and Cyrus had to flee for his life. Harry had helped him escape on the back of hippogriff called Buckbeak, and since then Cyrus had been on the run. The home Harry might have had if Wormtail had not escaped had been hunting him all summer. It had been doubly hard to return to Dursley's knowing that he had so nearly escaped from forever. Nevertheless, Silas had been of some help to Harry, even if he couldn't be with him. It was due to Cyrus that Harry now had all his school things in his bedroom with him. The Dursleys had never allowed this before. They generally wished to keeping Harry as miserable as possible, coupled with their fear of his powers, had led them to lock his school trunk in the cupboard under the stairs every summer. Prior to this, but their attitude had changed since they had found out that Harry had a dangerous murderer for a godfather. For Harry had conveniently forgotten to tell them that Cyrus was innocent. Harry had received 2 letters from Cyrus since he had been back at Private Drive. Both had been delivered not by owls, as was usual with wizards, but by large, brightly colored tropical birds. Hedwig had not approved of this flashy intruder. She had been most reluctant to allow them to drink from her water tray before flying off again. Harry, on the other hand, had liked them. They put him in mind palm tree and white sand, and he hoped that wherever Cyrus was, Cyrus never said in case the letters were intercepted. He was enjoying himself. Somehow Harry found it hard to imagine Dementors surviving for long in bright sunlight. Perhaps that was why Cyrus had gone south. Cyrus' letter, which were now hidden beneath the highly useful loose foldboard under Harry's bed, sounded cheerful, and in both of them he had reminded Harry to call on him if ever Harry needed to. Well, he needed to now, all right. Harry's lamp seemed to grow dimmer as the cold grey light that precedes sunrise slowly crept into the room. Finally, when the sun had risen, when his bedroom's walls had turned gold, and when sounds of movement couldn't be heard from Uncle Vernon's and Aunt Petunia's room, Harry cleared his desk of crumpled piece of parchment and reread his next letter. Dear Cyrus, thank you for your last letter. That bird was enormous. It could hardly get through my window. Things are the same as usual here. Dudley Dewitt isn't going too well. My aunt found him smuggling donuts into his room yesterday. They told him they had to cut his pocket money if he kept doing it. So he got really angry and chucked his PlayStation out of the window. That's a sort of computer thing. You can play game on it. Bit stupid really. Now he hasn't even got Mega Molician Part 3 to take his mind off things. I'm okay, mainly because the Dursley are terrified you might turn up and turn them all into bats if I ask you to. A weird thing happened this morning though. My scar hurts again. Last time that happened it was because Voldemort was at Hogwarts. But I don't reckon Can be anywhere near me now. Can be. Do you know if the stars sometimes hurt years afterward? I'll send this with Hedwig when he gets back. She's off hunting at the moment. Say hello to Buckbeak for me. Harry. Yes, thought Harry. But look, alright, there was no point putting in the dream. He didn't want to look as though he was too worried. He folded up the parchment and laid it outside of his desk, ready for when Hedwig returned. When he got to his feet, stretched and opened his wardrobe once more without glancing at his reflection, he started to get dressed before going down for breakfast. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye bye.